It's a great honor to be able to participate in this conference. And this side event is actually organized by the Samuel Tackley MIT Real Estate Entrepreneurship Laboratory. And let me do a little bit of an advertisement of what this unit is about. This is the MIT unit set up by a very generous donation by MIT alum, Mr. Samuel Tackley. A year and a half ago, he gave us $118 million to set up a lab to do just one thing. One thing is to propagate socially responsible real estate entrepreneurship in China. And this is exactly the topic we're going to deal with today. Now, what is socially responsible real estate entrepreneurship, and why do we have to focus on that? One, I do not have a definition or a Chinese definition of socially responsible real estate entrepreneurship in China. In fact, I don't think anybody outside China should define it. Chinese themselves should define it. So we are actually organizing a research project with Tsinghua universities. We will look at all the existing indicators of measuring environmental responsible investment, social impact investment, and what have you. And the Chinese will come together, professional government officials, teachers, the community will come together and discuss which indicators will be adoptable in China. And the resulting matrix will be the key elements of what we would define socially responsible real estate development in China. Again, I don't want to define it. I don't think MIT to define it. The Chinese to define it. But because of our lack of definition right now, just to give you a very rough idea of what is that about. Very simple. Socially responsible real estate entrepreneurship means that, or development means that, when an investor invests on a piece of land, he or she needs to consider about the entire communities, how that will affect the communities, and how affect the growth of the city as a whole. And that is the most elementary definition of socially responsible real estate development. Now, why do we want to work on that? Being a Chinese myself, I want to be a little bit self-critical, and I hope you don't mind. In the past 20 years, China has grown by leaps and bounds. But one thing we didn't do is being a socially responsible real estate investors. Many investments are socially irresponsible. So we want to change that direction because we feel that it is very important for China to get back on the right track. It's a long-term project. It's not 1 or 2 years. We are looking at 15 years of operation to change the education and the mindset of both existing professionals and the young people like you who are sitting in this room today to be socially responsible real estate investors. All right. Now we can talk more about that. I have for sure to introduce our lab, and if you're interested, our staff is here, and we will be happy to talk to you about our different programs. Today, what we're going to talk about today? Today is actually, we are, as you all know, you are all experts in China real estate. China is entering into a stage called new normal. And we have the best person here today, Dr. Deng, who is the director of the market economy and something, very, very long. Very long title. To talk about that. And we are entering into a new normal, meaning that in a nutshell, we are entering into slower growth. And how does that slow growth affect real estate investment is exactly the topic that we want to explore today. The first panel in here with me will be talking about entrepreneurship, particularly related to real estate investment. when the market is growing slower, when development of real estate has changed its shape and form, how can entrepreneurship help us to get us out from the conventional way of doing real estate into a new mode of operation? This is extremely important. The entire real estate sector is thinking about that. And I don't think we have a good answer to that right now. Right? And then Dr. Deng would tell us what's happening right now in the more macro view of not only the real estate market, but the entire market. You look at housing and how there are surplus inventory, particularly of housing, may or may not be a concern for all of us. All right? Now, so this is the so-called, so using our entrepreneurship to try to deal with the housing problems in China. This is the first session. There are other issues in China related to real estate investment. And we can only pick two because we don't have 3 sessions. The next one will be, we think is very, very important, is urban renewal. When the time comes, actually already arrived, the government no longer allow the local government to lease land, actually, as you may know, and there's no more land. Also, in some cities, there's no more land to lease. How can you do real estate? And urban renewal become a major, major issue, both in terms of being a socially responsible investors, as well as to promote the larger economic development and urban development of the entire country. That's the second topic. Third topic is on elderly home. As we all know, look at me, I'm old. I'm getting old, I'm getting worried. If I retire in China, who will take care of me? Right? As you know, in many, many situations, the young people have are not able to buy big apartment, so multi-generation are living in the same house. So how would that situation or demographic change may affect both real estate and housing development in China? So those are among the two we feel a little bit more urgent issue that we have to face right now in the next 5-10 years. So again, today we focus on entrepreneurship to deal with real estate problem, particularly with surplus inventory that we found across China, urban renewal, and then elderly home, or elderly real estate development. All right, fair enough. Now, I was told that it's not a lecture, so I need to sit down better. So you have to be very relaxed, very interactive. You cannot fall asleep. You have to speak. And I would have to, if I ever fall asleep, I will point them out. And you have to say something, say something intelligent. Richard, okay? No, you're just sleeping right now. Okay, all right, enough silly things. Should we start? Yeah. Enough ground rules. Any question about the structure and the way we proceed? Okay, good. All right. It's done. Okay. Now, I would not introduce the speakers because you can read the bio. They are all in the brochure, so I don't want to waste our invaluable time to introduce them. Their CV is like a laundry list. It would take the whole session to read them. Okay. Now, it's me, Yu Hong Hong. All right. Now, I have a few slides that I want to show you just to set the stage. This is very simple. Just want to show you that the economy is growing slower right now, from 9.7% in the first quarter of 2011 all the way down to 7.5% in 2014 fourth quarter. Moving forward, I believe it's about 6-something%, right? 6.5, 7.7%. Right? So we are actually, the economy is growing much slower right now. Now, you would say it's still growing. 5% is really amazing, but if you drop from 10% to 6%, and with the economy that large, it's a big deal. It affects not only China, it affects the entire world. Now, because of the slowing economy, there is there is a particular concern that I am interested in, is the phenomenon of surplus inventory. Now, the surplus inventory doesn't happen in the first tier city, as you can see from the data. It's very, very stable. There's no problem with holding the inventory at a constant rate. But the problem is mainly in the second tier and the third tier and fourth tier city. As you can see, these cities are really growing much faster in terms of inventory. And the reason why we want to have an entrepreneurship panel is to, how can we be creative and innovative to utilize or recycle those investment or resources that are not being put into use. They could be investment, I know, but still, it's an interesting phenomenon in China. There are people who hold multiple properties, but at the same time, there are people who don't have a house to live. Young people like you, if you want to go back to practice in China, it will be almost impossible to buy a house in Beijing. So that kind of imbalance need to be somewhat at least discussed and dealt with in the long run. Right? And as you can see, this is another graphic to illustrate the building up of oversupplies in the fourth tier, on 13 and 14th city. It's only saying that in 2013, for every property these cities sold, about 3 or 2.8 units added to the market. And so you are selling much slower than what you are accumulating in the stock. So that cannot be persist. That would be a major issue that we have to deal with in China. Now, whether it's a problem or not, Dr. Deng will shed important light on that. Okay, so I said enough. So I want to pass the stage to Jiadong, my very good friend, who is an entrepreneur. And we are looking up to him to see whether we can utilize the entrepreneurship to solve this problem for China in the future.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. Thank you for Professor Hong's invitation. This year is very special for me. I'm 20 years graduated from school and back to school. That's a lot of change. The topic today is entrepreneurship in the real estate sector, especially in the China market. Addressing that Hong's concern, that's how define the responsible real estate sector in China. I don't want to spend too much time to give the speech, but I would like to have the interactive dialogue after Dr. Deng, so we can talk more. Okay. Simple picture of my entrepreneur journey. I work for the multinational company, include the Lucent Technology, BDS, Hewlett Packard for multiple years. And then 10 years in military service and studied MIT Sloan in '97. The full entrepreneurship, the startup I gone through, the first one is called the HEC. Actually, is an internet company from office products to the service to the for the multinational customers. We sell this to the Office Depot year 2007. The second company I got started up called iSoftStone. Actually, we got two colleagues sitting down here. Right now, iSoftStone is the #1 IT service company and the smart city service provider. In the year 2010, we listed in the New York Stock Exchange, but they listed right now because they're looking for the high the market cap in the China domestic market. The third one is the tech park development. Actually, is science park developer in the China Tier 1, Tier 2 cities. You might be imagining that how come you are transfer from high-tech sector, internet, all of the staff to the real estate. That's echo to the Dr. Hong's major addressing point. Probably you don't know, in China we have a different kind of land characteristics. It's commercial, is the residential, and another specific land characteristics is called the industrial land. So that one normally is the government weapon to attract those the high-tech companies to invest in their local area. Second point is that the government own the land in China, so that's another very unique. It's not private land system in China. So government don't want to issue the land to the normal developer because they don't know their user, because they don't know what is their business. However, they issue the land to the end user, to the high-tech company. High-tech company don't know how can they handle the land. So that gave us, that's the niche market developer called the size park developer. So we became out. We understand the customer needs. We understand that the government expectation. However, myself, I don't have that experience for the real estate development. But that's easy. We had the team and formed that professional team to do that. So because gone through the previous experience, I can do that. The fourth one, the startup called the Space Union. Actually, Space Union is kind of for co-working style, like the WeWork model. We serve majority for the small, medium-sized customer and serve for the startup as well. But you may ask an additional question: why you switch from developer to the light assets operation model? Probably the people sitting in this room know that China gone through that developing stage in the past 20 years. So a lot of people, whatever the developer or the individual, make a lot of money. You can see that majority the wealth they can get is from real estate. Not only for the developer, but the individual, they buy the house, they make the money even more than that they earn from the salary. But right now, totally changed. The China became an oversupply, not only in the real estate sector, but in all of the sector. You can name that what you cannot buy from the market. The two things you cannot buy. One is high quality medical service. Second is a high quality education. Except these two, you can buy anything. So if you imagine that the real estate sector became an oversupply, the next stage is how do you better utilize your assets. That is why I'm gonna switch to the light assets model. If you look at the entrepreneur trend in China, oversupply I just mentioned, then economy transformation from manufacturing to the services, then even for the government, they encourage for the people, for the startup, for the innovation. Because China, we have more than 7 million graduates every year. The government leader has the big headache. How can we handle those graduates, have the job? Also, that government is very strong to push that the economy grows. Whatever they want to push, the most likely Chinese government, like the CEO, that drive the economy, that attract the investment, growth, GDP, all of those is like work as a CEO. Of course, they issue a lot of policy to encourage this sector. However, even the government encourage that the startup innovation, but most likely in China, I can say, is a copy model, but lack of innovation. That's the major issue for the China entrepreneur and startup. But if you look at the share economy, that a typical model in the real estate sector is the Airbnb and Uber and WeWork. These three, it looks like is number 3 that pioneer innovation in the U.S. Of course, we have the similar model in the China. We call that the 小猪短租. It's a copy that the Airbnb model. Didi is similar to the Uber, but is a dominant market right now. Space Union, we name ourselves looks like a WeWork, but we are kind of the combination, not only for the incubator, not only for the co-working space, but we try to serve for the different customers. So how can we better utilize the current assets, whatever that factory, warehouse? I saw that the innovation district the day before yesterday in the Boston area. Typically, they change that warehouse to the innovation district. I think is the kind of the innovation action from the government sector. But same thing that the Chinese government and the entrepreneur, a lot of service providers do the similar things right now. Our core competence, we try to create an innovation platform that let every people ourselves that we can encourage them to do that innovation stuff. Secondly, we got the industry-focused community because our background is high-tech, MIT alumni, and all of those expertise we can do that. Technology-driven because sooner or later, I think the business is driven by the big data and cloud computing, not only for the traditional business. Nationwide operation chain, that's our another characteristics. I don't want to name out, we have the tech share, the different sector, technology, education, culture, all of those, that's our focus. So I think that's about it from my side. That I'm very happy to answer your question after that briefing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. In the last 30 years, we saw many housing crises in Japan, in Southeast Asia, in America, and in Europe. But if we saw the housing market in 60 years or in 50 years, you may find a different opinion. So usually we talk about the housing market, talk about the real estate. We use cycles. But today I want to talk about the long trend, talk about the development stage. When we saw the real estate market, saw about the housing market in different stage, we may have different opinions. We found in most countries about 40 years ago, the market faced shortage. And then the market entered into the balance. But 20 years ago, it may be the market entered the mature market, and some economies experienced the bubbles and burst. So I want to talk about Japan. Japan is a perfect example to understand the long trend, the development stage, and the cycles of the real estate market. You can see from 1953, in fact from 1945 to 1975, it's about 30 years, the housing market in Japan was shortage. That means there's not enough housing to provide to the people. So you can see the new dwelling unit starts increased very quickly, and the peak is in the early of 1970s. And you will see the price goes up very quickly before the 1970s. So you see, the first period, the peak is in the early of 1970s, and you saw the price. Now we know this is the housing bubbles and the burst. But you saw the history, you will find in the 1960s, in the 1970s, the price growth rate even higher than the 1980s, late of 1980s. So why? In the 1960s, in the 1970s, even the price goes up very quickly. We don't see the burst of the real estate. But in the 1980s 1980s, what's wrong? Even if the price didn't go up as quickly as before. And you see the new dwelling units that's decreased since 1990s. And you saw in the 1980s, they increased again. And you found the price declined dramatically. And if you saw the American market, you still see in the between 2004 to 2006, you see the new dwelling units increased very quickly in the United States, and you saw the burst of the market. So what's the difference? What can we learn? Mostly we talk about the cycles, but when we talk about the cycles, that means the peak and the bottom. But if we saw the market through the development stage opinions, we will get different opinions. That means in the early 1970s, the Japan market entered into the balance. That means the household birth units on average 10 units. That means the market is not shortage, it's balance. This is the first turning point of the long-term trend. So the second, you can see in the early of 1980s, it's about 10.5. So that means the balance. And then in the late of 1980s, it's over 1.1 units. That means oversupply. So different stage. And you can see when the market was in shortage, you can see the new dwelling units go up very quickly. The price go up very quickly. But enter the balance, you found the new dwelling units go up, and the price still go down, and the price still go up, but oversupply both go down. So if we saw the development stage and the entrepreneurship, you will find when the market was shortage, it's the best period for the entrepreneurship because the market was expanding, the price is go up, it's good. But when the market entered into the balance, you can't see the market expansion very quickly. It's stable, even it will go down, but the price still go up very stably. But if the market enter the mature, the market will stable, and sometimes it will go down, and the price generally will very stable. But if the market enter into the oversupply, it's dangerous, very, very dangerous. So traditional, we saw the market in the development stage opinions. We have our own opinion. But if we saw the real estate sector compared to other sectors, we can find in the past 20 years, many sectors have a great innovation. But in the housing sector, it's very hard to see some big innovation, and affordability is still a big problem for all countries, for all peoples. So what can we learn from other sectors? And up to now, the real estate sector is still one of the biggest sector in our economy, and most average people's wealth was in the housing. So it may be a big opportunity for the industry to get some innovation. That means you can't get innovation just by register in this field. You should get a different sector come together to make the sector more affordability, more innovation, and more sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. So, as a moderator, let me try my best to link the two very exciting presentations together, and then I'll just open the floor for questions and comments and what have you. I think Jia-Dong, what get me particularly from Jia-Dong's talk is about how entrepreneurship could be a way to take us out from the current so-called new normal or the stable state of development in not only the real estate sector but the entire economy. Now, why do I agree with Jia-Dong that the real estate sector is a sector to focus, but not the other sectors? As you're all familiar, in China, there's something called land-based financing mechanism, right? So in China, when the central government, when the central government want to implement some policy, they would just simply say, City X, go and do it. I want you to have a lot of incubator in the cities. And they will not give them the money. So the mandate passed down without support. Now how will the cities implement or execute that mandate? They use land. Land is a trigger for the local governments to entice developers to come in and build the incubators. At the same time, they will get some land for their own development to cost subsidize the incubator. And to the extent right now, this method become the major policy implementation strategies in China. Land. And that's why the real estate sectors is so important to bring or to rejuvenate the Chinese economy back into a growth path rather than remain a stable state. One. And second is that what Jia-Dong didn't say is what he is doing is tied to this concept of shared economy. People are not owning anymore. Owning is too expensive. Thereby, you have to share. Cut the property or office space into small pieces, rent it into small segments, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day. So a common Joe like Hong can go to Beijing and have a conversation with my banker for a big business deal without having to go into the Starbucks to do it. But so that is the way to go. And that's how the WeShare, the co-working space, co-living space, and all these ideas emerge in China. In fact, they are running faster than the US because of the need of the idea of sharing, not so much more of owning the entire units. So this is a very interesting, and I think Jia-Dong is being humble about what he's doing, and he's actually moving the frontier of these strategies to not only help the real estate sector to come back up, but if the real estate sector comes back up, the entire Chinese economy will back on track again, and this is so important. And if the Chinese economy is back on track, what happened? The Brazilian economy, American economy, another economy will be a little bit more stable. So this is a critical part. And I also want to tie that to Dr. Dunn's talk about the housing market from a historical perspective. He's actually saying very clearly, because I have a privilege of hearing him talk previously, so I understand the argument. He's saying that everybody calm down. There's not a problem in China. Okay? We are going through stages of development. This is a stage that we are facing what Japan is what we were facing a long time ago. Germany was facing a long time ago. So what we should do, we should actually capture the opportunities to restructure the real estate sectors in a way to utilize our innovation, creativities, to get through this stage. So there's nothing good happen. There's no crashes, no big crisis, and this is just a normal stage of development of a long-term real estate trajectory in China that we are seeing. With this, both talk about changes, both talk about entrepreneurship, and I will open the floor for your inputs and comments. Yes, please.
We can hear each other. I'll speak about
Yeah,
it.
you can yes, yes.
All right.
Relax. It's very informal setting. Huh?
So I'm Lynn. I actually work at Axon Stone, one of Seattle's company. I have a question. On the slides you showed in China, two things you can buy. One of them is higher college education. But at the same time, there's around 8 million graduates every year. So my question is that if you can elaborate more on why is higher education still a missing piece in that system when you look at such a high volume of college graduates? And secondly, as a new age entrepreneur, what can company do to encourage the new generation, the 7 million graduates every year, to get on the right entrepreneur path, not to everyone become a seller on Taobao, not that something wrong with that, but to encourage more on the innovation side.
Okay, thank you. The first question is that why China has more than 7 million graduates but still lack of high quality education. Because I think the majority reason is the system. Right now government control the education and the medical services. You cannot raise the price. You cannot have the license free. I mean, it's not every people can have the education certificate or license to open the school to teach for somebody else. So that's a majority reason. The secondly, that's the content control. That's the university. They got a challenge that never change for the course, for long years. You can sense of that, especially in China, they have a very tight control for this sector. So that is why is one of the area we cannot get at the good services. The second question came out for the entrepreneur tracking. The government encourage a lot of people go to get to the startup journey. However, most of the government, especially for the local government, for individual, the number one reason is, okay, why that's you're Ma Yun, why not me? So the government said that, okay, we set up the incubator, startup camp, the hope we have the next Ma Yun came from our camp. The individual get encouraged to say that, okay, yeah, if I go to the startup, I'll be the next Ma Yun. But sense of that, the Ma Yun and Steve Jobs is very few, very the short percent, very very small percentage for the success. Even the more difficulty to select, like the U.S. president selection and the Chinese major secretary selection, is a very small population. I think that encourage the young people go to startup, not teaching them how to be more success. You should teaching them how can you avoid failure. Because the government sector that encourage the startup, you cannot expect every people become Steve Jobs, but you can encourage people that have the small media size, the firm, and hire few people, you can survive for yourself. Maybe you can hire the 3 or 5 people, but your business is very steady. So that's the startup encourage. But if you go to another round, in your territory, in your the incubator, if you have somebody become Ma Yun, the governor will be more proud. Yeah, we are the next of Zhejiang province. But you say, hey, this guy is hire 5 people, do the small business, not the rising star. That's they don't have that such an ownership from the government sector. So my point is that we should encourage young people to try to avoid failure, not become the rising star. Rising star is a very very short percentage. It's not expected by everybody.
Just want to add one point is entrepreneurship doesn't really imply high technology. Entrepreneurship implies both innovation and persistency. You have to implement the idea. If you just have the idea and not implement it, it's not entrepreneurship. Something that's very low tech that can solve the problem and you can implement it and solve the problem. That is entrepreneurship. And what I learned from Jia from studying his case is that you have to be persistent. You have to learn how to avoid failure, but at the same time you cannot afraid of failure. You have to not afraid to fail, because you will fail. Being an entrepreneur, you will fail. But you have to be persistent to pursue your idea in a very consistent way. And I'm a little bit worried about being at MIT, and I shouldn't say this, because once you talk about entrepreneurship, you talk about high-tech, internet, and everything, but it doesn't have to be. So long as a person have a very creative, low-tech, high-tech idea to solve a problem and can be persistently implement that project, is entrepreneurship. Yes. Thank you.
Richard Henderson from Mass Development. I was fascinated by Professor Deng's national statistics about housing and the talk about quality, the move to quality from quantity. I would be interested in knowing to what extent there is a shift to certain cities in Japan, and is there still a shortage in some areas where there is perhaps some sort of quality of life that people want and want to go to, whereas in other areas where that quality of life doesn't exist, is there an oversupply? Similarly, in China, there are the tier 3 cities. What is it that entrepreneurs can do to, if the environment does not exist right now with the amenities that people want to live in those cities as opposed to living in the tier 1 cities, how does the entrepreneur create those kind of amenities, that kind of quality of life? So you're not just creating housing units anymore, you're creating community. And you're actually creating community through your co-working space. It's not just a space, it's community. So I'd love to hear more from both of you about that.
Thank you very much. It's a great question. Yes, different cities face different situations. But first, in my personal view, I think first we should have a general view of the whole market. So the whole market is okay, it's good, so you can try to deal with some special cities, and the different special cities face different problems, such as in China today, some big cities, they face shortage, but the main reason is they don't provide enough land. If you see Beijing, in the last 5 years, the new house building is less than the last 10 years. So that means in 2003, Beijing new housing hit the peak, and since then the new housing building is declining. So you saw the price goes up very quickly in Beijing, but only a few people knows they don't have built many new housing. But in general, in China, you see the new housing built hit the peak in 2011. And you also saw in some small cities, they faced oversupply. But for the whole China, according to our calculation, in 2013, the household average on 1.0 units. That means in 2013, China housing market entering the balance just from shortage. So you can compare China housing market with Japan, with West Europe in the early of 1970s is very similar. And we can see in United States, in Japan, in West Europe, just between 1960s to 1980s, they experienced a big change in the housing quality. Yes, if you saw the literature in the 1970s, even in Paris, they faced the high price. Many people didn't satisfy it, and the quality is very poor. And I remember it's about 40% of the total housing in Paris. They didn't have indoor toilet. So you saw the China in 2010 for the urban cities. It's over 20% housings didn't have indoor toilet or the independent kitchen. So you can read many dates about China housing, but the China housing whole quality is very different from developed countries. You see, in America the house is very good, but if you saw China, even if in Beijing, in the city, you can see many houses. The quality is very bad. So it's very, very different. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that the community is every people looking for to build that in the co-working space. But our approach is that the industry focused and the supply chain focused. For example, that whatever came to the high-tech sector, like that smart devices, right now you need the people for design, for the manufacturing, for the channel, for the advertisement, for the promotion. You can pick the expertise from industry. You do not need to himself to do everything. What we can do is that we can find that the partner through the supply chain, either upstream or downstream. That's improve the efficiency for them. Secondly, you can find more business. So that's the traditional co-working space can provide it.
Well, I want to add, this is actually a wonderful question, and I think Dr. Deng, at the end of his presentation, pointed out the important fact that, at least in China, to change or to adopt to the new environment has to be taking a multidisciplinary or perspective approach. It's exactly fit into your argument about we are not, as developers, we are not building simply houses or mortar. We are building communities, an environment. The co-working space is exactly the point. You just don't give an office and sit a couple of young people there. That will be a miracle happen. You have to create a dynamism within which people push each other in terms of the creativities and generate this kind of innovation that cannot be found anywhere. And in fact, I would think that even at MIT, we are not so sure why there's Silicon Valley, why is 128, why is it Kendall Square. We are still looking into it. But the fact is very true. If you just simply rely on giving land and building, and you want entrepreneurship to emerge, or creativity to emerge, this is not going to happen. It takes more than that. And that's why we need, as Richard pointed out, you need to take a very wide perspective to be a developer, to think about the community, technology, city planning, anything together in a package, as Jordan pointed out, to have these people all come together and work as a team, right? And he will manage it in a way that will make things happen. That is the core of the problem. How can you manage it? That is the core of the problem.
It's still kind of for the startup as well, that you don't have a problem to lack the money, but the rest of it, everything is same. For marketing, for the result, for your customer.
It's everything.
Yeah, everything is same.
Yes, please.
Sorry I'm late, but I want to ask the director for the new Samuel Technique Center. So are you focused only in China doing real estate entrepreneurship for Chinese? There's actually a lot of overseas Chinese in California, in LA, in San Francisco Bay. They're looking partnership with your group. But our website we should talk about China entrepreneurship in real estate, but not talk about overseas Chinese. So I want to know, is that your focus maybe in the next phase when you roll out your growth?
Thank you so much. Very simple answer, and we can talk about it after the meeting because it's more of a little bit outside the scope of the topic. No, we are not only doing just China. China is a window through which we look to the world. Now, I personally think that there's not such a division between the Chinese economy and U.S. economy anymore. I am actually thinking, I tell the team that we are doing international work. If China is not doing well, what happened to the U.S. economy? Not doing well. What happened to the Brazilian economy? Not doing well. Now, the Chinese can have a lot that can we are doing a lot of work and investment in education and research outside China because we know that there's a lot of lessons that the Chinese can look at and modify them in a way that can be adopted in China. Not wholesale adaptation, but they will take the pieces that will fit into the Chinese economy, or to create a sort of a framework through which they can create their own method, because one cannot be creative without a framework. So looking at Japan, looking at other countries, if you have California cases, we're welcome to go and work with you. And they will say, okay, how can we follow the story a little bit, but create our own solution? That is what the lab is about. We are not doing just China. China, the reason we picked China, partly because of the donor's wish, is a Hong Kong, China investors, but he have nothing. He didn't invest in China at all. There's no vested interest for us to go into China to influence your real estate policy. We don't. So, but it's all about how China tied to the rest of the world. Any other questions? Please.
Okay.
Yes. It's one of the STL fellows.
Yeah, no, I have a question for Professor Dong. Dong, you have mentioned that the development of the Japan and West Europe market with the US market, but I witnessed one of the difference between the Japan and the Western Europe market with the US market is the development of the mortgage-backed security. So I'm wondering if Chinese market or Chinese government is thinking of developing the mortgage-backed security in Chinese housing market.
I think in the future, personally, we will do it. And you will see today's many speakers come from different investment funds. And if you ask them what the date they set up the investment fund, most of them set up in the late of 1970s. So that is the stage when most people own their own housing, then the new income will put to any other field they will want to get return. So you will find different stage have different answers. I think we should talk in the later because of time.
Okay, good. Thank you. So let me, as a moderator, end the session with my thought. This is what I learned from the very interesting dialogue. It doesn't have to be your fault. I learned that what is happening in China is not so problematic. This is one stage of development that we are going through for a sort of long history of development. And the current stage requires a lot of creativities and entrepreneurship to deal with. But the type of entrepreneurship that we need is not simply high-tech or innovation. It's ability to bring different discipline, different professionals together, work to create livable community, livable city. Thereby, the people will buy the surpluses that we show you early on, the oversupply of property that we show you early on in the second and third and fourth tier cities. In fact, if you ask me, and it is the time to go back to China and work in China, because there's a lot of good deal we can make from the situation there. Thank you.